Tonight in Democracy20, tracking the success of South Africa's Independent Electoral Commission.
As an organization, we will continue to render the best services within our ability to the public and to work towards the fulfillment of our constitutional mandate to deliver free and fair elections.
Pleading for houses in the Northern Cape.
I've lived in this shanty for 7 years and it is not even nice.
And looking back in history, how two former homelands buried the hatchet a mere 3 weeks before South Africa's first democratic elections. Well, good evening and welcome once again to Democracy20, our special pre-election show in which we celebrate 20 years of democracy in our country. Tonight we examine the work of the Independent Electoral Commission, a Chapter 9 institution which presides over all elections in South Africa. Now, the success of South Africa's first democratic elections in 1994 was largely credited to the excellent work done by the then Interim Electoral Commission, as Yuli Sanjamela reports.
Effective, efficient and transparent electoral management, which impacts on electoral credibility, is integral to establishing and sustaining a healthy and vibrant democracy. For the majority of citizens, it is the only means of participating in the governance of their country. This responsibility is usually entrusted to an electoral management body. In South Africa, the Electoral Commission, known as the IEC, carries the task of administering and ensuring credible, free and fair elections. In 1994, the management of elections proceeded largely by way of ad hoc decision-making and trial and error on the part of the IEC. This was in part due to the lack of a comprehensive national voters' roll and other logistical problems. This was accompanied by violent tensions and anxieties surrounding election day. Over the past 2 decades, the IEC has had to deal with varying challenges.
The concerning part on our side in that is the stability, is the freeness and fairness of our exercise and the safety of the staff that we're going to deploy in that area. The IEC can only say that it will do as much as possible that the country has the climate all over, including areas where there are disputed boundaries rather. And there's nothing more we can say about this matter.
Provisionally formed in 1994 and permanently established in 1998, the IEC has played a critical role in securing democracy in post-apartheid South Africa. Although an independent body, it is accountable to the National Assembly. While the 1994 election was widely praised as being a success, it also served to illuminate the electoral management challenges that needed to be addressed.
The formula for the allocation of funds is due to be produced by a parliamentary committee shortly, and we will be administering it.
Preparations for the 1999 elections thus included, among others, the establishment of a common voters' roll and the introduction of an electoral code of conduct. The Code of Conduct regulates party behavior during the election period with the aim of reducing violence and intimidation and to ensure free and fair elections. Compared to the 1994 poll, the incidence of violence was considerably reduced in the 1999 elections. The number of election-related complaints submitted to the IEC also substantially fell from over 3,000 in 1994 to just over 1,000. The guard had also changed.
I will shortly be relinquishing the office of Commissioner and Chairperson of the Commission. President Mandela has accepted my resignation with effect from 1 February 1999. The process for the appointment of a replacement has already started. In the interim, the IEC will continue to function normally. I am confident that the IEC has the requisite skills and know-how to deliver elections that are not only free and fair, but are voter-friendly and cost-effective.
BAM had a relatively smooth reign.
As an organization, we will continue to render the best services within our ability to the public and to work towards the fulfillment of our constitutional mandate to deliver free and fair elections whenever they should take place.
The past decade saw a plethora of new political parties coming to the fore. The Commission had to work within distinct and shifting challenges of the electoral context. This indicated a vibrant democracy and the maturity of the country beyond a new dispensation. A new guard had taken charge. Pensi Tlakula had been a member of the Commission for years. The set of challenges that she had to face had fundamentally changed. On the eve of the 20th anniversary celebrations, Tlakula became embroiled in a personal scandal. She was accused of being complicit in an alleged corrupt deal about the headquarters of the Commission. The report indicated that procurement process was not fair, transparent, and cost-effective. Tlakula defended herself. Political parties soon entered the fray. The ruling party differed, citing the report only identified errors, not necessarily corruption.
To me, the timing is terrible because we need to run the election machinery very effectively and not cast aspersions on the IEC at this point in time.
Political observers also had their say.
In spite of all the difficulties surrounding a particular individual or personality, justifiably so, and now found by Treasury with some degree of credibility, the institutional mechanisms are still sufficiently robust to ensure that we can have a relatively credible election.
Well, as usual, we've been asking you to take part in every show, and tonight we'd like to do the same. You can do this by emailing us your views, this on elections at sabc.co.za. Send us your emails, or you can send us SMSs, this to 33726. Begin your SMS with the message and the word vote, rather. SMSs will cost you 150. Remember, vote is your first word in your message to 33726. For tweets, you can use the hashtag SABC Elections, and you can also find us on Facebook. This will be on SABC News Online. Send us your comments, and we'll try and use them throughout the show. Which brings me to tonight's guest, and we now welcome to our studios. Right here is former Judge Johan Krichler, the first chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission. Judge Krichler is also a former Constitutional Court and Appeal Court judge. Good evening, Honorable Judge, and thank you very much for joining us right here on Democracy 20. Looking at some of those visuals, some of the story that we had 20 years ago, a bit of a younger judge, but still a judge the same.
Yes, it's incredible that 20 years have passed. One can hardly believe it. It's been like a wink of an eye. But we've come a long way. Democracy has grown tremendously. Our electoral capacity and competence has grown a great deal. It's incomparably more comfortable now to have an election in South Africa than it was in those days.
Speaking about it, what were some of the challenges that you faced then in 1994? I'm sure the administration of that election was not a cakewalk. It must have been a headache.
No, I would never describe it as a cakewalk. First of all, the country had never ever had a single election for everybody in the country. It was a novel experience. We'd never had an electoral commission before. Various state departments had used to run the separate apartheid elections. So we had a brand new organization, a brand new electorate. We had not had a reliable or an acceptable census. We didn't know how many people there were. We didn't know where they were. We didn't have a voters' roll. We didn't have an administration at all. And we had just over 4 months in which to set this up, whereas the experts told us you need 2 years if you want to run a competent election. So we were so stupid we managed because we didn't know how difficult it was.
I think in the true form of South Africa, you always, push come to shove, you come through, and the turnout was fairly obvious that people wanted this because it was mind-blowing. People stood for hours. I'm sure if we held elections for a week, people would have stayed for a week if they could.
Tabisa, that's of course the point. Everybody, or the overwhelming majority of South Africans, wanted the elections to take place and wanted them to succeed. That tremendous upsurge of political enthusiasm carried the whole effort through all of the difficulties and problems and hitches. The people wanted it to work, and it then worked.
Now, what were some of the main problems, if one could could put him that way, in the run-up to that?
First of all, you must understand that an election is an infinitely complex organization. It's an undertaking in which you've got to distribute literally millions of individual items to tens of thousands of people at thousands and thousands of temporary places. There they've got to be produced in a secure situation. You've got to provide a place where people can vote. Mm-hmm. You must be able to count their votes. You must be able to secure the ballots. The organization in itself is very complicated.
And of course, the political parties themselves need to be so-called on the bandwagon, if I can put it that bluntly. And with the IFP, which was a major role player politically at that time, joining late as well, that kind of puts through a span in the works.
It was great fun. The tension made it extremely exciting. Nowadays, I prefer more boring elections than that one.
Well, you resigned as chairperson just before the 1999 elections. Any particular reason for that? Would you mind?
In my language, we say you don't drag old cows out of the ditch. Those cows are dead and buried.
But overall, looking at where we are now in terms of our democracy, we've come a long way, as you said. We're now heading to yet another election. Although there are glitches here and there, but as you said, we've grown as a country democratically, as well as the IEC. Mm-hmm. We've lessons learned over the years, I guess.
I think the IEC is a competent, well-organized, well-oiled machine that is going to deliver competent elections. I think one can be confident. I'm proud of the organization that is there. It's a long time since I had a personal interest in its day-to-day affairs, but as a co-founder of the organization, I'm very, very proud that we have an electoral administration that can hold its own with any in the world.
Judge, before we carry on, we've just got a quick tweet, something that came way after your time as well. Social media these days. Victor Munyana saying, what does he see SA in the next 20 years, and does he see youth playing part in building a better South Africa? I guess Victor asking the Honourable Judge that question, where do you see South Africa in the next 20 years? And what do you think about the IEC under Tlakula currently as it is? This one coming from Unacha Grootboom, Judge.
Well, the first question answers itself. 20 years from now, today's youth must be running it. It's today's youth's opportunity to pick up the baton and run the race from here on. That's the way it must be. The young people still don't register in sufficient percentages to make one comfortable, but that's a universal problem. The youth, to them, the future belongs, and they must look after it. As far as what the IEC is doing with Pansy, I am not going to comment on the disputes relating to the contractual efforts. That's got nothing to do with the running of the election. That will have to be sorted out in due course. But the Electoral Commission, under the chair of Advocate Tlakula, is more than competent to run the election.
Judge Krechler, we're just going to have to put it on hold there for a while. We'll take a quick break, but we will continue the conversation after this break. Don't go away. We'll continue our discussion with Judge Krechler after the short break. As you said, Democracy20, interesting conversation indeed we're having tonight. Stay tuned straight after this. Welcome back. You're still watching Democracy 20, and if you've just joined us, our studio guest tonight is the esteemed former chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission, Judge Johan Krickler. Judge Krickler and I have been having a conversation, an important role he had in shaping our democracy with a number of groundbreaking judgments during his time on the benches of the Supreme Court of Appeal as well as the Constitutional Court. Judge, we continue our conversation looking back 20 years of democracy. Are you happy with the developments of our society?
No. I do think, and I think I share the view with many people, that we've lost the plot a little. The great enthusiasm, that unity of purpose, that solidarity that we felt in the early 90s has faded to a substantial degree. That's predictable, but it's nevertheless regrettable. I think there is much more suspicion now than there was then. There is a less give and take that there was, but we'll get over it. We've had bigger problems in the past.
What do you think has been the cause of that, Judge? Is it because we're too progressive for our own good? Have we lost the plot in a way that you use those words? What is it that we've lost that makes you say no?
No, I don't want to get into a long and involved political debate. I think that
in terms of society,
the great enthusiasm that there was at the time, it was a honeymoon, and everybody was starry-eyed about this new South Africa and the Rainbow Nation, and we're going to go into it together. There is a good deal of disillusionment, disappointment. We've got well over the 7-year itch by now. The marriage is not all that happy. We'll work through it. We'll have to.
Then the other question, I think, coming on the back of that is that word democracy that we hold so dearly. Is it safe in South Africa, as it were, judging how it has been over the past 20 years? Is it safe?
Democracy is never safe. Democracy is not a thing that arrives. It's not a gift that is dropped on your doorstep on Christmas Day. It's a process that you've got to work on continually. The rule of law, human rights, democracy are all valuable norms and standards about which we've got to be alert and active at all times. They'll be endangered from time to time. We've got to resist those dangers and overcome them.
But overall, I mean, you mentioned South Africa being that honeymoon phase of democracy, so to speak, that marriage between trying to get where we are. Is it too soon to say maybe we're still a young democracy, therefore we should expect those glitches? Or do you think by now we should be way past that? We should be concentrating on what matters, and that is making sure that the society and South Africa as a whole is a free, fair, democratic country?
I think I should answer you as a surgeon would answer the family of the patient who's just been operated on. We're doing as well as can be expected.
I'm going to ask my director if we have a couple more tweets. I know that you've been sending them in as we had earlier. Just before we go to those, do we have one? Okay, maybe not. We move on to other questions now. Elections, in Africa are not always free and fair as far as we know. The yardstick was obviously maybe based on South Africa as a whole, without the so-called big glitches that we've had. You've assisted in a number of elections around the continent. Can you tell us the difference, maybe what they've faced and where we've succeeded, or where we can learn off each other, so to speak?
Well, elections have a number of things in common. The administrative complexity, the interaction between the administration and the political parties, the extent to which political tensions complicate, to the extent to which political cooperation facilitate the process. But each country has its own unique problems. Kenya with its ethnicity problems of the past, Zimbabwe with its deeply divided society, Sierra Leone post-Civil War, Liberia likewise. Each country has its different problems. I think by and large the one common feature in all young democracies is the impatience of the people to see change more rapidly than is realistic. history is a long process, and we've had many, many years of lead up to democracy. Democracy must grow, it must be established, it will take time. We are better off than any of the others where I have worked, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Honourable Judge Johan Krichler, I think we should leave it right there. Thank you very much for taking part in the show on those words. I think it's probably no more questions. We're not even going to take tweets. That's very open-minding and very helps us to appreciate the 20 years of democracy we've had in the country. Thank you very much for joining us. That was Judge Johan Krichler, is the former chairperson of the IEC as well as a retired Constitutional and Supreme Court of Appeals judge, speaking to us right here in Democracy20. Wise words indeed. Before you go to a break, the delivery of houses remains a problem. This in the Northern Cape. A community in Namaqualand is in dire straits as the non-delivery of houses takes its toll. The people of Kamiskroon was promised houses 10 years ago, but residents say it would appear that they have been forgotten as far as that's concerned.
Kamiskroon in the Namaqualand, a place where a house is considered a luxury. When SABC News visited Kamiskroon 10 years ago, not a single RDP house had been built. A few months after the story was aired, the provincial government built 30 houses and promised more. 10 years later, nothing has changed. The shortage of houses at Kamiskroon has had an acute effect on Adelaide Brown for most of her life. She first lived in the local primary school hostel, then moved into the shack and has been on the waiting list for almost 10 years.
We in Kamiskroon last received 30 houses 10 years ago. There's been nothing since then. I've lived in this shanty for 7 years and it is not even nice.
It's the same story all over the village. At least 2 families call each of these 4-roomed houses their home. Leandra Calbert lives with her mother. She has given up hope after a 6-year wait on the housing list.
It's uncomfortable to live in an RDP house with your mother, your brother, your child. My mother has also adopted 2 other children, so it's very uncomfortable to live like this.
But it has not been all doom and gloom in the Northern Cape. After a wait of almost 10 years, residents of Laratung Park in Kimberley finally received the keys to their houses. The provincial government says it tries to provide houses in all areas. It says in the case of Kamiskroon, about 50 houses will be built in the next 2 years. But the people of Kamiskroon say they are tired of promises and simply want their houses that were promised to them so many years ago. Ulrich Hendricks, SABC News, Kamiskroon in the Northern Cape.
Welcome back. Time now to look back at the news of the day 20 years ago. Now, after a prolonged standoff in the early 90s, the former Ciskei extended a hand of friendship and the then Transkei grasped it quite firmly. The 2 homeland governments came together under the guidance of a transitional executive council. This is how SABC News reporter James Barkhuizen filed the story on the 7th of April in 1999.
A six-man delegation of Transkei cabinet members was invited to give advice to the newly formed Ciskei Council. Transkei military ruler General Bantu Olamisa shared his experience as a government leader with the two TEC-appointed administrators, Reverend Bongani Finka and Mr. Pieter Goosen. In his welcoming address, Reverend Finka said it's a fact that the people of Transkei and Ciskei are one family and blood relatives, and that they share the same history and values.
In a few weeks, the people of the Ciskei and the people of the Transkei are going to be reunited together in one province, as they should have been from the beginning.
In a response, General Olamisa said that he was glad to hear that Ciskei was inviting Transkei to help stabilize the Greater Eastern Cape Kai region. He said, according to Transkei military intelligence, there were agents provocateurs trying to destabilize Transkei and Ciskei during the election period.
I'm glad now that the government here is willing or has opened doors for ourselves to cooperate in that regard. And I would suggest that we should establish a security committee in the entire Eastern Cape where we are going to have SADF, SAP, Ciskei Defence Force, Ciskei Police, TDF, as well as Transkei Police, to make sure that they meet periodically to address elements regarding criminality.
Discussions ended on a high note, and it was clear that there was a lot of goodwill between General Olamisa's government and the delegates from Ciskei.
And that's all, unfortunately, we have for you time for today. We'll be back again tomorrow evening, same time, same place at 6:30. Until then, take care.